It is only natural for a prison to accomplish its job with high levels of efficiency and determination at maintaining public safety. It is no wonder then that these facilities will work with new state-of-the-art technologies and techniques in the efforts of making sure that not a single individual will ever have the hope of breaking out of containment and escaping back into society. Of course, this can lead to unforeseen intensities, as there are several facilities and prisons that work to house the most dangerous and unstable criminals from around the world. So here are 4 of the most highly secured prisons you can find in countries from across the globe. Fuchu Prison, Japan. In 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake caused the destruction of Tokyo's main prison, the Sugamo prison, which eventually led to the combined efforts to form the Fuchu prison to meet this demand in prison requirement. The facility first opened in June of 1935 and since then has grown in size and occupancy for its inhabitants. The most interesting thing about the Fuchu prison is that there is hardly much information relative to the maximum security prison even to this day, nearly 85 years later. The prison itself is surrounded by a 20-foot tall wall that completely surrounds the compound and works to contain the 56 acres of land the prison covers. Though the official reports of the institution claims to focus on the rehabilitation of inmates and supposedly begins to separate and classify inmates relative to gender, nationality, type of penalty, length of sentence, degree of criminality, and the current state of the inmate's physical and mental health, to provide the proper care necessary for rehabilitation and treatment, the actual witness accounts of both prisoners and guards of the facility completely contradict official reports. This contradiction might be the cause of such high levels of secrecy and a lack of true general information relative to the compound, as witness statements compare the inner workings of the prison similar to that of a Nazi boot camp that attempts to turn prisoners into mindless robots, and failure to complete specific tasks in specific ways, such as rules for walking, sitting, using the restroom, eating, talking, and even down to how to pick up and place objects in your cell, could lead to brutal physical punishment to the point of unconsciousness by the guards themselves. Given these reports and evidence gathered by investigators of the Fuchu prison, there is an incredibly large pushback relative to the regulatory process of the prison by human rights activists, who claim that the prison doesn't work to rehabilitate criminals, but rather to fulfill unfair and unjust punishments that border on criminal processes themselves, and an overall violation of fair human rights. La Santé Prison. On August 20th, 1867, the La Santé prison of France was created to house the most dangerous criminals and to quickly deal out the harshest punishments imaginable. The literal translation for the La Santé prison ironically translates out to mean the prison of health, but that could not be further from the truth. Dr. Véronique Vasseur would later begin her work at the prison and begin to document the terrible conditions of its facilitation and the overall lack of quality for the inmates housed in the complex. In fact, the condition and punishments of the prison were so horrid that Dr. Véronique began writing personal daily reports to cover the atrocities she had witnessed while working on the treatment of the inmates within the compound. She had uncovered accounts after accounts of prisoners that were so deranged and depressed that it was common for said inmates to attempt to swallow their forks just to try and end their misery, which, of course, only led to worse conditions for themselves. There were numerous reports of inmates stripping naked just to use their clothes as a way to stuff cracks in their cells to keep out insects and rats that had infested the entire facility. On top of this, the lack of showering and sanitary conditions led to tremendous outbreaks of skin rashes across all prisoners, regardless of containment. In her reports, Dr. Véronique attempted to best detail the condition of the prison in an attempt to bring these accounts to light and show the violation of human rights that occur in the prison to this day. One of the more horrifying accounts is that each and every mattress used by prisoners was infested with record numbers of lice and other insects that seemed to become permanent residents of the prison as well. Interestingly enough, Official reports from the prison have worked to discredit the claims of the doctor and routinely claim to be reporting high standards of living for the prisoners inside La Sante prison. Despite these supposed claims from the prison, however, it is nearly impossible for journalists or officials to visit the prison and conduct their own investigations, as efforts to prevent outsiders attempting to investigate the prison has been reported from La Sante prison officials. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. Seen as the focus of most prison escape movies and other references in pop culture around the world, the island of Alcatraz, located in the San Francisco Bay, was the perfect location to make the most escape-proof, isolated and maximum security prison the world had ever seen. The Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was world-renowned for its supposed level of cruel conditions, high-class and deranged criminals, and shady experimental history relative to psychological testing and conspiracy theory. Alcatraz was the prison to end all prisons, as it was originally designed to hold the most corrupted and deranged criminals of the United States, of whom would continuously cause trouble at other federal prisons. This, of course, led to the federal penitentiary gaining an incredibly unwelcoming reputation and targeted by many different human rights activists and attorney generals. Alcatraz was regarded by inmates across the US as the toughest prison in America and was considered to be the world's most dangerous and fearsome prison of its time. Ex-prisoners would give reports, though impossible to prove, of frequent acts of aggression from guards and inhumane conditions that would routinely test their sanity. A journalist back in the 1940s would later go on to write about the prison after being able to witness its interiors as the great garbage can of the San Francisco Bay, into which every federal prison dumps its most rotten apples into. This would only work to contribute to the prison's terrible reputation and would lead to a statement from the United States Attorney General Frank Murphy that made the claim that the Alcatraz Penitentiary Prison was conducting psychological tests that worked to build up sinister ambitions and attitudes among its prisoners. Interestingly enough, however, it seems to be that these claims and rumours were more of a matter of fear-inducing paranoia and not actually grounded in facts and reality. As a matter of fact, Alcatraz and its supposed horrid conditions were commonly seen as favourable by its inmates compared to other federal prisons at the time. There are also numerous accounts of location requests from prisoners from across the United States of whom would volunteer to be transferred to the island from their current federal prison location. Many inmates would cite the food conditions of the prison to be of high quality compared to other prisons, as the officers had to eat the same meals as the prisoners due to the island's isolation and lack of food options. Another added privilege cited by the prisoners was the ability to work in the prison workshops that provided them with jobs and work experience that were translatable to the real world after their rehabilitation was completed. Today, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary is no longer an active prison, given the fact that its terrible reputation led to the compound getting shut down due to public pressures. The island can now be visited by tourists from across the world, as the location has been turned into a museum that teaches an in-depth history of the facility and released documents of the practices common in the prison at the time, including pictures that show prisoners playing instruments and practicing in the workshops and mess halls. ADX Florence. The United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, known as ADX Florence, is a nearly 40-acre supermax prison in Fremont County, Colorado, that currently operates at the highest level of security among the United States and houses the worst collection of criminals and mentally ill individuals that the world has ever seen. The prison itself only houses male inmates that are deemed so incredibly dangerous that their escape spells out a disaster on the scale of a violation of national security. The cells are small, 7-foot by 12-foot containers that keep the entire prison population in solitary confinement in watertight chambers separated from each other at nearly all times. A similar cell design taken from direct inspiration of this prison was used to house the fictitious character of Hannibal Lecter in the popular 80s movie depicting maximum security prisons and his containment. Interestingly enough, not all of the prison is above ground, and given the lack of detailed reports or further information, it is believed that a large portion of the facility could be operating underground and under black budget priorities. Despite these levels of strict protocol and attempts at preventing an inmate's ability to attempt an escape plan of any kind, the prison is actually regarded as higher quality than most other prisons and have come under far less criticisms compared to facilities at the state level that tend to have a slew of problems ranging from overpopulation, low staff to inmate ratios, and security issues. Even notorious escape artist Richard Lee McNair wrote to journalists from his cell in the Supermax prison, stating that he thanked God for the quality of this prison. He would later go on to cite that there was an incredible amount of mentally sick individuals that are so unbelievably terrible that to have them anywhere near your family or the public in general would be a national tragedy. The escape artist would go on to later promote the quality of the guards at the facility, citing the abuse they deal with from inmates and even risking their own lives to save the lives of even the most dangerous and undeserving of inmates. This has been the 4 most highly secured prisons. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.